It was his idea to do this lobby. So please do big up Anthony Vassilos, our star lot, who's been there through thick and thin for applied psychologists over the years. But I'm not going to speak any longer. I'm going to ask people here. We all know what we're here for. Applied psychology services have been actually suffering over the last 8 years of this wretched Conservative government that we've got in power. And in order to make sure we speak up for applied psychologists, it's essential that applied psychologists do speak to their MPs, their elected members of Parliament, councillors, clinical commissioning group, boards and trustees, and even your own trust boards, chairs and trustees, wherever they are. We need to take the message forward. We're going to say no to the ending specialist services. We're going to say no to the custody posts, and we want to make sure funding for psychology services are protected and ring-fenced, and also that we look after our professionals as well, to make sure that we look after the needs of those professionals. So I'm privileged enough to have speakers here. We've got Natalie Kemp, who's founded our own website that looks after the needs of applied psychologists. We've got Richard Pemberton over there, who is from the Division of Clinical Psychology as well. And we have Nick from the Association of Child Psychotherapists as well, who are here joining us. So without further ado, I don't know which one of our got to go, so I'll let Paula.
I've got to go and meet the SBU as well, so can I just say one thing quickly?
I'll let you on the financial.
But not on the, I'll just make a broad point. Thank you. Is it on, yeah?
Yes.
Yes, it's on. A little bit outright. Yeah, that's
all right. Well, thank you, Lorenzo.
Can I say, as a fellow member of Unite, it's a pleasure to see you all here. I'm the Shadow Health Secretary. We've got Barbara Keane, who's our Shadow Mental Health Minister, Shadow Cabinet, Paula Sheriff, who's another Shadow Mental Health Minister. They can talk in more detail about the broader issues which affect applied psychiatry. But can I just make a quick point before I've got to go, is that first of all, we in the Labour Party are really on your side. We're campaigning very hard against the Tory cuts and the Tory underfunding to the NHS as a whole. We've been in the House of Commons today, having a go at the Tories. Paula was raising the issues around CAMS in the House of Commons today. And if there's a Labour government, which we're working very hard to bring about, we'll be increasing the expenditure that goes into the NHS. An extra £6 billion a year. And obviously that will impact mental health services as well. And we also want to bring an end to the cuts and the fragmentation and the privatisation that we're seeing at a local level, much of which will affect the sphere that you work in. So we are committed to delivering a public, a universal, publicly administered and provided NHS, and we're going to campaign hard for that in this, the 70th anniversary of the NHS. So thank you very much for all that you do. I'm sorry I've got to leave, but you're here with two brilliant speakers from the Labour front bench, but we're right behind you. And thank you again to Unite for bringing this issue to the House of Commons today, and we're going to look at the ways in which we can continue to push these issues on your behalf. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you.
Oh, do you want to say? Paula's got to go next.
I'm not going to go first.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paula Sheriff. I'm the MP for Dewsbury and the Shadow Mental Health Minister working in Barbara and John's team. I'm also proud to be a Unite-sponsored MP. I'm fairly new in this role, so I've been meeting quite a lot of you, a few familiar faces here, just talking to you. It's really, really important. I think John made the point that we need to protect the professionals as well, and I think there's just not much of that going on at the moment, if we're absolutely frank. I've been meeting some of you, you've been telling me about difficult working conditions, jobs being down-banded, huge caseloads, far bigger than it should be. So, but it isn't good enough just to say Tories bad, Tories are doing it wrong, the government aren't doing it right, because we need to present an alternative as well. And Barbara and I are going to be working really hard on that over the coming weeks, months, and possibly years, because obviously we don't know when the next general election will be. But we're absolutely on your side, and we want to ensure that you have a voice in Parliament. We want to be very much driven and guided by what you tell us, because ultimately you're the ones who are out delivering the services and the provision out on the front line. So you're the ones. We might have the vehicles to take it forward in Parliament, but like I say, Labour will be putting forward an innovative, progressive and pragmatic vision about what Labour will offer. We'll be providing more money, as John just alluded to, but we'll also be looking after the professionals, and we'll be seeking to achieve that Paris parity of esteem that Jeremy Hunt keeps talking about, but appears to be going backwards every single day. And as Jonathan just said, we had health questions in the House this morning, and the government health team just stand up and pretend everything is absolutely rosy in the garden, and we know that is far from the truth, not just in physical health and acute trusts, but particularly in mental health. And I talked this morning about how many trusts are only spending £10 per child on mental health, which is actually less than it was in 2012, which I'm sure you can all agree is an absolute disgrace. And with things like Brexit on the way, we also need to ensure that spending is protected and that your rights at work are protected as well. Because if we've got people leaving the job just because they can't hack the pressure anymore, then that isn't good for the service. We need experienced professionals, because ultimately we're all there for the patients. And you know, all I would say on a final note is please hope there's a better way. I know there's a better way, there's a better life under a Labour government, but please don't give up that hope, and hold us to account when we're in government. Remind me of what I said, you know, because we really mean this. You know, we will absolutely do everything we can, because fundamentally we really care. Can I say the same about the government? I'm not too sure. But thank you all. Thanks for Colenso, wherever you are. Oh, thank you, DJ Colenso. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that was fabulous. Okay, I think next we'll have Nick from the Association of Child Psychotherapists.
I can do that. I'm going to have to read out, sorry.
Nick has actually come here as a last minute replacement for Heather Stewart, who is the chair.
Yes, I'd love one, thank you very much.
Association of Child Psychotherapists.
No, that's fine, because I mean, I'm not making an excuse, I'm
Really pleased that we and the Association of Child Psychotherapists involved and on board in this campaign, because they do provide a vital services. I remember meeting Julia Mercado and Danny, who are reps on the OPC, who actually talk about the linking up of psychotherapy services with other services, not just services in health, but with youth centres, quality services, and all sorts of refuge services there are for other people. So it's really important that we make the link between psychology and other services in the public sector, because they are increasingly great features to the whole holistic service that we want to provide children, young people and other people that are suffering from mental distress. So without further ado, I give
Thank you. Hi, Nick Waggett. I'm Chief Executive of the Association of Child Psychotherapists, and my colleague Heather Stewart really wanted to be here today. She's the chair, but unfortunately couldn't. Thank you to Colenso and to Unite for asking me to speak here at this really important event. I'm pleased to be here to represent child psychotherapists as members of the Applied Psychology family, and to offer our support to the Unite campaign for government, commissioners and service providers to recognise the value and importance of this workforce for the delivery of effective and high quality services, and to take action on the pressures that are making it increasingly difficult for us to work with the skill and competency that our trainings afford. The link between outcomes for service users and a well-supported workforce is clear, and so is the link between a demoralised and depleted workforce and poor service delivery, as we have seen in mid-Staffordshire and elsewhere. Within child mental health services, as in other areas, we have seen a rapid erosion of specialist services and job roles. There has been a hollowing out of senior clinical roles, leading to the loss of clinical leadership, of effective multidisciplinary working and support for more junior staff, who are increasingly expected to carry a heavy burden of complexity and risk. Lack of funding leading to downward pressure on grades is one factor, and mental health services for children and young people continue to be in a poor relation in the NHS. But there is also a disregard for the training, skills and experience of child psychotherapists and other applied psychologists, and their ability to work with and support the most vulnerable children and young people. As such, morale is plummeting, and if they haven't been pushed out already, many are leaving services as they feel unable to work to their full competency and recognise the risks and damage being caused. Our survey for our Treat Them Right campaign found that 70% think staff morale is inadequate. I spoke to a senior colleague last week who is leaving the NHS after 26 years service. He works in a trust where there were 20 child psychotherapists a few years ago. Soon there will only be one. He called this the silent catastrophe of CAMHS. The government talks of expanding the mental health funding of the mental health workforce and services, but we don't see evidence of that when our funding of our training continues to be threatened. Given the Prime Minister's stated commitment to parity of esteem, the lack of ambition and ring-fence funding is surprising. This needs to change urgently. The government needs to listen to the frontline workforce of applied psychologists gathered here and around the country who are telling them that things aren't working. You cannot expand services on a depleted, denigrated and demoralised workforce. Otherwise the vulnerable will continue to suffer and the silent catastrophe will accelerate. Thank you.
I'll pass it on. Who is going to take next?
Thank you.
We need to get big statement.
Hi there everybody, thanks for coming today. My name's Dr. Natalie Kemp. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm recovering from burnout, working in NHS current systems as they are now, which is not good enough. I run a forum for mental health professionals who are also struggling with their own mental health called integratementalhealth.com. We have people in there who are incredibly wise, incredibly competent, incredibly good at what they're doing, but are struggling under striving to help plug the gaps in an inadequate service. What happens when funding isn't there, what support isn't there, is that the structures start to fragment, they split and they collapse. And what happens when structures do that? People do that. Staff will try their best to plug the gaps. They will use everything they have. This is a vocation. They're not doing this work to be average. They're doing this work because they love it. They want to be there to help people who access services, which could be any one of us, and included myself, at any time. It is a human thing. It's not an other thing. It's in the room and it's here, and it's probably with some of the people who are standing around me right now. What we want to do is help make sure that we can bolster structures, so we can bolster supervision. We need supervision from experienced clinical psychologists in at the top. What psychologists do is work with the most complex of situations, with the most complex of needs. We're at the front line, we're at the coalface, we're supporting our colleagues in social services, we're supporting our colleagues in the medical services, we're supporting our colleagues in nursing. And what we try and do is really help so much on all levels. But if the structures aren't sound, if the funding's not sound, the staff struggle, and then what happens? We fight really hard to protect safe spaces for the service users who need our help, who are the most vulnerable. And they are all that matters. They are all that matters. So then what happens is they find increasingly that the services aren't around that they can access to receive the help. So what we want to do is we're usually there in the therapy rooms, we're talking to support others to flourish, to lift other people up. But it comes a time when we need to stand up ourselves as psychologists and actually start speaking out and voicing. Because it's not good enough that these things continue to happen. It's not good enough. People are crashing, they're burning, and they're trying their best. It's because they're good, it's because they're competent, and it's because they want to help. So please, what we're asking Parliament to do, what we're asking government to do, is help support us so we can continue to support ourselves, so then we can continue to support other people. So sometimes we need to stand up ourselves in order to make sure that that happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Well, yeah, Charles, yes.
Anyway,
You stand in front of there.
yeah. I'll bring it just a second. Yeah. Barbara.
Thank you. It's been incredibly helpful. Incredibly helpful for me as Shadow Cabinet Minister for Mental Health to listen to the last two speakers, and I'm sorry I can't stay much longer, but I just wanted to say a couple of things to add to what you've already heard. What you've heard from is how we as a Shadow Health team are going to campaign in general terms on the NHS. But my responsibility is with the Shadow Cabinet is mental health and social care. So if I talk about those things,
last year we suddenly found ourselves facing a snap general election. We had to come up with some manifesto. Jonathan said, I think when he was here, we pledged to put an extra £30 billion across the Parliament into the NHS. There's always an argument about whether there's enough money for the NHS. I think everything I've heard from just now suggests that there really isn't. You've got a serious staffing problem. People are suffering with burnout, people are walking away, people are voting with their feet. So we know that £30 billion is needed. But we particularly did earmark, we certainly did earmark an extra £1 billion for mental health to ease the crisis that you're talking about. I think the other side of things that's important is we particularly want to see 2 or 3 things from the government, and we've made them our pledges in the manifesto. We want to see more money allocated for children and young people's services. Children and young people only services in mental health only get 8% of the budget. Certainly where I am an MP in Salford in Greater Manchester, young people and children comprise 22% of the population. So it's ridiculous. The mental health budget is too small. The children's mental health budget, that's why it's become the Cinderella of the NHS. And we can't continue with Cinderella services and poor relation services. It's not good enough. But not only that, what's really wrong, apart from just the scale, the quantum of the budgets, is that they're not ring-fenced. So repeatedly, every time that Paul and I stand up to ask a question, to make a speech, we must ring-fence mental health spending. Yes. We must ring-fence children's mental health spending. Because as we kept finding out, what happens is, even when the government pledges extra, the 1.25 billion extra, all that happens is that CCGs siphon the money off for other NHS priorities. So the local trust needs more funding, they get the funding. Any other service needs the funding, they get the funding. And everything that you do, it becomes not the priority it should be. So those things, we made other manifesto pledges, but I think those are the most important. The other thing that we're really doing to hold the government to account is we keep getting ridiculous smoke and mirror pledges like 21,000 extra staff by 2020-21. When we looked into that the day it was announced, that has to come out of savings. The majority of that has to come out of savings. Where can the savings happen? From everything you're telling me, how can there be more savings? So we will insist every time that Jeremy Hunt gets onto his feet and says there are going to be more staff to deal with the problems that our MPs are raising, we will say, and where is the funding coming from? So we will be carrying on holding them to account. But I do understand that these workforce issues that you're raising here are one of the key problems, and we will get that right. So we will get that right. There will be extra budget. There will be extra budget for CAMS, and it will be protected. I know it's very easy to hold out a brighter future, but we all need that brighter future, and you will have a brighter future with a Labour government. So that's what we're fighting for. Thanks very much for coming today. It's really cold, and it's great that you've turned up. It's great to hear. Well, it's not great to hear what you've just said, but I need to hear it. So thanks very much to the 2 speakers. I'm sorry I have to go, but we're in the middle of a social care review, so the other part of my job, and I'm sure this would help too, if we could make social care in mental health a better service that works properly. That would help me too, wouldn't it? Yes. So I'm off to do a bit more of that work on the social care review this afternoon. But thanks very much. And if anybody wants to be in touch afterwards with any further suggestions, we're in a constant policy updating situation. We didn't have long for our manifesto pledges before that snap general election. So if there's further things we should be thinking about, do get in touch. I'm sure David Monday and others here will. Where is he today? We'll do that. We'll be in touch. But if anybody has any suggestions or things you want to write to me about, David, we'll do. So that's the future. Better funding, ring fence, more funding for children mental health services, and proper staffing that will help with the things you've talked about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Richard Pemberton. I'm a member of the Executive Committee of the Division of Clinical Psychology. This is Omar Rao, who's also on part of the DCP exec, and in a show of collegiate kind of friendship, it's also Mike Wang, the head of the new Association of Clinical Psychologists. And so I'm going to say something briefly, and then they're going to follow in. Amra's going to particularly talk about the work that the division's been doing on well-being of the workforce, which is particularly relevant to what's been said before. I'm old enough to go back to ASTMS. I was on the Occupational Advisory Committee, which was the Psychologist Advisory Committee of ASTMS, which many union managers later now denied. That was a very powerful and effective committee that worked really closely with the Division of Clinical Psychology and won the grading structure and conditions of service that psychologists and psychological therapists have in the NHS now. That was a joint professional union activity. I know some people say that clinical psychologists did better out of that than other applied groups, but it's there as the structure and it's an achievement, and that's what's being whittled away currently. I think it's, I don't think Lisa Cameron's here, but it's great that she set up the all-parliamentary group on psychology. It's great that Unite are organising this event, but I think much more is needed to rebuild the structures, both between the profession and with the union, to get much more influence. Within the world of clinical psychology, the creation of the Association of Clinical Psychologists is relevant because the BPS restricts how clinical psychologists can be politically active. Mike will not have those same constraints.
Excellent.
I think that I'm not going to tell you things you already know. I think I'm just going to concentrate on training for my bit. That I don't know how many of you will have seen the Psychological Professions Network, which again is great that it's a generic professions network, has put out a sort of mini manifesto. It's England focused, but it's actually for training an additional 20,000 psychological therapists of all sorts. And that is crucial in terms of lobbying HEE and getting the profile of that, because at the moment that profile's much too low within health education in England, so that we need to create more training places in order for the government to meet their own current targets. I think there's a need for a delivery board, because with these crazy new training arrangements, everything's going to the four winds, so what's the overall national plan for that? There may well be a need for transitional funding to support that, because we don't want the introduction of bursaries if they come to do to us what's happened to nursing. I think there's a major argument for looking at staff shortages in other parts of the NHS. It's very difficult to attract and recruit psychiatrists, psychological therapists. There's no shortage of people trying to get in. Certainly in clinical psychology, it's extraordinary the kind of strength of the applications that we have, so that we need to be looking at how we could help offset deficiencies in other professional groups. And I think from a union point of view, re-establishing a clear career pathway again was particularly relevant for IAP workers, well-being practitioners, but also for everyone, because the whole agenda for change has been kind of pulled away in a really underhand and unhelpful way. But I think that's enough for me, and I'm going to hand over to Amra to talk about the work the division's been doing on well-being.
Thank you, Richard. I'm Radao. I'm also from the DCP exec, and I'm chairing the leadership and management. I think it's great to see people gathering here, but I'm somewhat disappointed. I would have really liked to see more psychologists here. I think applied psychology matters, but I also believe that well-being matters both for the service users, and well-being of our workforce matters a great deal. We will be launching the results of the workforce survey tomorrow, and what's really of great concern for us is that over 40% of psychological professionals are reporting feeling depressed. They have also been saying that they do have a great sense of failure,
high level of stress is reported, and there are many experiences of bullying and harassment which are on the increase. And many of you who have seen the NHS survey results, you would know that we are not alone in feeling that way. NHS system, I think it is very, very overstretched. I'm not going to repeat the reasons for that because many of you have spoken about it. We know that services have been cut down. We know that the senior psychologist positions have been deleted. People feel leaderless, and I think one of the area which has been greatly highlighted by our survey, and when I'm talking to people all across the country, what I'm hearing is that people are not feeling safe. So maybe I can understand why many of the psychologists are not really there, because they feel that if they want to speak about what's going on, they would be targeted. And I think we must take it seriously, because psychological safety matters. And if we would not be able to be a collective, and this is where I'm also grateful that Mike is here, because I think that BPS, Division of Clinical Psychology, other branches of applied psychology, and Association of Clinical Psychology needs to be working together with Unite and other professional groups so that we can say boldly what's not really working for NHS, because I think we do have a great deal to offer, but in order for us to speak about, we need to act without fear. We need to really act with confidence and say we are here to serve our communities, but we need to be supported. And we matter, and we matter because people we are serving, they do matter as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is going to be pretty short and sweet. It's just to say, first of all, a big thank you to Unite for organising this event. Hugely needed and hugely supported by the Association of Clinical Psychologists UK that I represent as the chair. I'm very grateful to Anthony and all of the David and the delegates for the work that's been going on, and on behalf of ACP UK, I want to say that we're very keen to work closely with Unite. We're not like the BPS in the sense that, although obviously we're very supportive of the DCP, but I'm sure that DCP colleagues will be the first to admit that some of the activities and decisions of the BPS in recent years have made things very difficult, particularly in terms of political action of this kind. And ACP, as Richard said, doesn't have those scruples, and we are determined to push the boat out for applied psychology and particularly clinical psychology, and that's why I'm here supporting this event. I think I'll finish there, but thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you. Well said. Well, just very quickly, if anyone, thank you very much, all our speakers. I'm really privileged that you've managed to join us today and actually got this campaign off to a rousing start, because we don't stop today, do we? Do we stop today? No! We're going to continue, and we're going to go on and on. First of all, let me just say, has anyone got to see their MP now? Yes. No. Okay. Our lovely Roisin McDermott, who is our parliamentary officer in the blue stunning jacket over there, is going off to Parliament, and is going to take people to Parliament that needs to go to Parliament. So go with her, because she's got a pass and she can get you through. So go with Roisin if you need to go to Parliament now to see your MP. So thanks very much. The last person who's going to speak now is obviously our stalwarts, our strength, our power. It's Anthony Vasilov, who's chair of RPC. He's going to say a last few closing words. To Anthony.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. Actually, this is a start, because applied psychology has been working for many years. They've suffered being one of the smallest professions, but it is now time to assert ourselves. It isn't just about this government, it's about the work that you all do within a setting that's dominated by medical models, doctors and nurses in large numbers, and what you've been doing hasn't been appropriately valued. And we see that you're destroying of your career structures and on the downgrading of your costs. If we are going to contribute under whichever government, we are going to have to work together with the professional bodies in whatever form they take, any groups that represent applied psychologists. We're not precious about what kind of psychologist. As an applied psychologist family, we incorporate the child psychotherapist, we incorporate all kinds of applied psychologists of different denominations. It is about the work people do. And it isn't about protectionism. It's about being able to put you in the right place within the NHS and social care services. Thank you again for coming, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Brilliant.